Hello, good evening. Hello.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, we can start the session. So today we are going to start the second source, that is business income source. So what is the meaning of business? So the business, for the term business, we have a specific definition. That definition is provided in section 195. According to that section, business includes. So I think you can remember there are two important terms for the definitions. First one is means, the second one is includes. So here we are given the term includes. That means in addition to these uh, two paragraphs and three paragraphs given under this one, another similar wordings also we can use. So that is why we have this term includes. It means a trade, profession, vocation or isolated arrangement with the business character. That means to be a business, there should be a business character. So we do not consider the time duration for that business character, and it can be very shorter period, but if there is a business character, then we consider it as a business. So we have several terms: trade, buying and selling or similar thing, trade. Then the profession means professional services provided by some professionals. That means chartered accountants, lawyers, doctors, they are professionals. Then the next term is vocation. What is the difference between profession and vocation? So for the profession, there should be a professional qualifications. With that qualification, if a person is giving their services to some another person, then we consider it as a professional income. And if we are receiving some amount for that service as a service fee, that is a professional income. For the vocation, that person does not have that professional qualification, but they are also providing some service with their knowledge. So we call it vocation. For an example, carpenter, plumber. Without proper professional knowledge, they can do it. Mainly carpenters, බාසුන හෙලා අපි කියන්නේ. So they had knowledge through their family background sometimes. So because of that, we call that kind of services a vocation, not the profession. Or any isolated arrangement with a business character. That means there may be several isolated arrangements. That means suddenly we can do some businesses, selling something immediately at that moment. So that is a type of isolated arrangement. But if that it has a business character, we consider it as a business. Then however shorter the duration of the arrangement, that means we do not consider the time period for that business. Sometimes within 1 minute, within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, within 1 hour, we can do a business. Or sometimes for some businesses, whole period without time limitation, there will be a business. So that then not only these things, but a past, present, or prospective businesses also consider as a business. So what is the meaning of past, present, or prospective? Past, present, or prospective means you can identify present. So now we are engaging in a business. So if we are receiving some income with regard to that business, we should consider that income under business income. So what are the past businesses? Sometimes we are receiving some income now in respect of the services we have provided in the past period. So that income also, even though now we are not engaging in that business, if we are receiving some income in respect of that services we provided in the past period, that income also should be categorized under business income. So you know what is the present businesses. That means the businesses now we are engaging. So that income definitely we should consider. So in addition to that, we have prospective businesses. So what kind of prospective businesses? Prospective businesses means still we have not yet started the business. But for the purpose of business definition, we consider prospective businesses. That means we have not yet started the business. For in respect of that future businesses, now we can receive some income. We have not yet started the business, but income can be received during this period. So that kind of income we can consider under business income. But we exclude unemployment income. So why? Why should we exclude employment income? Because there is a specific separate source for the consideration of employment income. So that is why I told you that the unemployment income is a dominant. So first of all, if we are having several types of income, when we are categorizing that income, first of all, we have to consider whether that income should be categorized under employment category or not. So that is why when we are considering the business income, we should separate employment income if that is already included in the business income. So that is a must. So employment income should be considered separately. That is why we should identify employment income and independent service providers income separately. If a person is providing a service under independent service provider category, that income should be categorized under business income. For an example, I have already given this example to you when we are discussing employment income. Now also I will remind it to you. So for an example, that is, suppose we can consider a doctor. Doctor can serve for the government sector or a private sector as an employee. At that time, that income should be categorized under employment income. Sometimes, without that kind of employment arrangement, employment agreement, the doctor can serve to a private hospital as a consultant. So he is going that place, give his consultancy service to that hospital, and at the same time he can collect his service fee. Then we call it professional income. So he will provide that professional income as a independent service provider. So that kind of income should be categorized under business income. So in both these two services, the service is same. It is a consultancy service. First one is a consultancy service as an employee. That income should be categorized under employment income. The next one also a consultancy service as a doctor, but it is providing under professional income category. So that income should be categorized under professional income, that is business income. Then these are the items that we have to consider when we are calculating business income. So these are provided under subsection 2 of section 6. So if you can go through that document, you can see the government document, that means Inland Revenue Act. In the act itself, these details are provided. So it is better. I think if you like to see that document, we can do the this lecture through that through the act, or because in this slide I have it mentioned in point form, but in the act we have it in detail. So these are the items we have to consider for the business income. But please give me 1 minute, because I want to show you the act. Okay, I think you can see the document. This is the Consolidated Act. In the Consolidated Act, you have given business income. So it is under Section 6. Under Section 6, business income details are provided. You can see subsections. This is subsection 1. Subsection 1 is for the explanation of that section. So that is a person's income from a business. So you should know the definition for the term business. That is why I have already explained it. Business for a year of assessment. That means during that year of assessment, that income should be generated. So we consider not the income, but the gains and profits from deducting the business for the year. So gains and profits means that after deducting the deductions, expenses, we have to consider for the business income. So those are the things that explained under subsection 1. So you have given subsection 2. Subsection 2 says the items that should be included when we are calculating a person's. So now you can see the term person. Person means not only an individual, but entity is also there. Here, under employment income, it has mentioned an individual's income from an employment. That means Section 5 is applicable to an individual. I think you can remember, I have already explained the definition for the person. So, individual also included under the term, under the word person. So person means individuals and entity. So section 5 is for the individual only, but section 6 is applicable to a person. Person's income from business. So we should know the definition of this business. In addition to that, the definition for the term person. Person means individual and entity. So entity means company and all other partnerships. Everything is included under entity. So for all businesses, section 6 is applicable. Then subsection 2 says the items that should be included. Here it has mentioned like that. Business shall be included. First one is service fee. So what is the meaning of service fee? If we are providing a service, at that time we are receiving some income. So here service fee means that income. Suppose I am a doctor, I am providing consultancy service, the income I am receiving should be included under subsection 2, that is under service fee. If I am if I am a teacher, if I am doing some, if I am providing some services, at that time I am receiving service fee. The second one is consideration received in respect of trading stock. Trading stock means now I am engaging in a selling of some stocks. It can be a trading stock. That means trading businesses, manufacturing and selling, buying and selling. Anything can be included here because that is in respect of the stock. First one is for the services, second one is for the goods. If I am receiving some amount after selling my goods, at that time, that income should be considered under business income. The third one is gains from the realization of capital assets. Capital assets. So, we should know what are the capital assets. Capital assets are, definition for the capital asset is provided under section 195. According to that section, capital assets mainly, capital assets means the assets that we are using for our day-to-day activity. So I will give you that definition later because several times we cannot move from this slide and again to the act. But because of that, I will explain it later. So gains from the realization. Realization means selling or anything can happen. Realization means selling, transferring, abolishing, removing, anything can be happen. So gains means a profit calculated in accordance with the Inland Revenue Act. Here calculated under Chapter 4. Chapter 4 in the Inland Revenue Act. So if we have a capital asset and after selling that capital asset, if we are having gain, that gain should be calculated based on the provisions of the Inland Revenue Act. If we are having that kind of income, that income also should be included under business income. Then the next one is realization of person's depreciable asset of the business. That means if we are having some depreciable assets and if we are having some gain on that depreciable after realization of that depreciable asset, that income also should be included under business income. So for the depreciable asset also we have a definition. I will explain it later. The next one is amounts derived as consideration for accepting a restriction on the capacity to conduct the business. So what is the meaning of that? Amounts derived as consideration for accepting a restriction on the capacity to conduct the business. So there should be a consideration. That means some amount should be received. And for that consideration, there should be a restriction and accepting a restriction. So what kind of things? For an example, suppose I have a business. I am doing a business as a restaurant chain. I am going to do a business that is a hotel. I'm going to open up a hotel in my area. That means I am not yet started the business. I am expecting to start a business in my area that is a hotel. So in the same area, there is a huge restaurant chain. So that restaurant owner considers that my business that I'm going to open up in future is a threat to his business. At that time, what he can do? He can request from me to refrain from starting the business in this area, and for that purpose he can give me some money, some consideration for not accepting a business or not starting a business within that area. He can give some consideration. That means it Actually, I don't know these kind of things are happening in real world or not. But this is a type of a business. This is also type of a business income. That means I'm going to start up a business in my area. My rival, he want to stop my business starting in that area. So he's trying to give me some money to stop starting my business in this area. So he will give some money to to stop the starting of that business. At that time, I am not yet started the business. So my business is a prospective business. I am not yet started. It is a prospective business. For that prospective business, before starting that business, I have received some money. So that is a kind of business income. So for this purpose, we have a specific definition. That is why in the business definition, we have the three words past, present, and prospective. So for the consideration of this kind of income as a business, the definition is provided the suitable wordings. So that is why we have prospective businesses. Yes, isn't it illegal? Isn't it a bribe in that case? Not to start a business. Yes, it is. We are not yet started. It is kind of a bribe, but it is within the private persons. Within the person, that means you. It is not with the entity. හරියට ආණ්ඩුවේ ආයතන දෙකක නවත්තන්න යනවා වගේ. එහෙම වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. It can be, but in the government sector, no one can do that kind of things. But within the private sector, that kind of things can be happen. It can be a bribe. That person is bribing, but it doesn't matter because we do not consider whether that income is legal or illegal. Legality is not a matter for the taxation. So because of that, we should consider that income as a business income. So that income is not the future business, not the present business, but it is a future businesses. So to include that kind of income in the business income, we have given a broad definition for the business. That is, prospective businesses also should be considered as a business income. The next one is gift. If we are receiving a gift in respect of the business, so we have this four words in respect of the business. That means if that is a gift and that gift is received in respect of the employment, that gift should be considered under employment income. If we are receiving gift in respect of the business, that gift should be considered under business income. The next one is amounts derived that are effectively connected with the business. That means it is not directly connected, but it is effectively connected with the business. And that would otherwise be included in calculating the person's income from an investment. That means sometimes some income can be categorized under investment income. But if we are considering that income, it is effectively connected to the business. Even though that can be categorized under investment income, it is effectively connected with the business. At that time, we should categorize that kind of income under business income, not under investment income. For an example, suppose it is a rent income. It is a rent income. That means I want to expand my business. I am thinking of expanding my business. At that time, I will be informed by someone that there is a new building that is suitable for my expansion of the business. So now still I am thinking of expansion of the business, but suddenly I have informed by someone about a building nearby my business that is really suitable for the expansion of my business. So at that time, what can I do? I will definitely purchase it. because that building can be used for the expansion of my business. So I can purchase that building, but I have not yet started the expansion. But I am going to I am going to expand my business. That means my intention is to expand the business. Because of that, that building is considered as a business income. Yes, that is true. But until we are starting the expansion, what can we do? Until that date, we can rent out that building. So when we are renting out that building, what is the income we can receive? If we are renting out a building, that means we are giving it for a company or any other person for as a rent, because we want to expand the business but not yet planned. But I want to expand the business, but it is just a intention. My intention is to start the business. So at that time, what I can do, until then I can rent it out. So the income I am receiving is rent income. Normally, rent income should be categorized under investment income, not under business income. But the intention of this building is not for the investment, but for the business purpose, for the expansion of the business. At that time, that income is effectively connected with the business, even though that is a rent income, that is effectively connected with the business. Because of that, that kind of income should be categorized under business income, not under investment income. එක පැහැදිලි ඇති මං හිතන්නේ. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි බිල්ඩින් එකක් රෙන්ට් කරාම අපිට ලැබෙන්නේ ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් ඉන්කම් එක. මොකද ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් කැටගරි එක අපි කතා කරනකොට ඔයගලන්ට පේන්නේ rent income should be categorized under investment income. හැබැයි මම දැන් ගත්තු බිල්ඩින් එක ගන්න එක්ස්පැන්ෂන් සඳහා තාම එක්ස්පැන්ෂන් එකට කිසිම සූදානමක් නැහැ. හැබැයි මගේ හිතේ තියෙනවා එක්ස්පැන්ෂන් එක කරන්න. My intention is to expand the business. तर මම මේ බිල්ඩින් එක ගන්නේ අර ඉන්ටෙන්ෂන් එකෙන්. බිස්නස් එක එක්ස්පෑන්ඩ් කරන්න. එහෙනම් this building should be for the purpose of the business. ඒතර බිස්නස් එකට තමයි මේක ගන්නේ. බිස්නස් එකට ගත්තට බිස්නස් එක එක්ස්පෑන්ඩ් කරන තුරු මම ඒක රෙන්ට් කරනවා. But I cannot consider that income under investment income because the intention is not to the investment but to the business purpose. So because of that, that income should be categorized under business income. The last one is other amounts required to be included under this act. So in addition to these things, any other income that can be categorized under business income should be included. So these are the main things that we have to consider under business income. So after that, similar to section 5 in employment income, we have given subsection 3. Under subsection 3, it says to exclude some items. Exclude. So what are the items that we should exclude? Exempt amounts and final withholding payments. If there are some items that are exempted, that item should be excluded. And if there is a final withholding payment, that is also should be excluded. I will explain that final withholding payments later. Then the amounts that are included in calculating the person's income from an employment. So I have already explained it. So these are the things that we have to exclude. And these are the things that we have to include when we are calculating the business income. So after that, so now I'm again moving to the presentation slides. Okay. So these are the items that we can consider for the inclusion of the business income. Here you have in point 4. Then these are the items that we have to consider as a excluded amount. So this is the definition for assets. So asset, for the term asset, we have a definition. So all these definitions are provided under Section 195 of the Inland Revenue Act. You can read, you can refer the Act for further details. So this is the asset definition for the asset. It includes a tangible or intangible asset. Tangible or intangible. ඔගොල්ලෝ දන්නවනේ tangible, intangible කියන්නේ මොනවද කියලා. It includes, not the term means. That means similar, any other items also can be included. Similar item. It should be a similar item. Includes කියන වචනේ පාවිච්චි කරලා තිබුණොත් මේ කියලා තියෙන ಜಾති වලට සමාන තව ඒවා එකතු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. But if it says means කියන වචනේ පාවිච්චි කරලා තිබුණොත් මේ අපි කියන ටිකට අමතරව වෙන වචන බොහෝත් ඒකට එකතු කරන්න බෑ. මේක තමයි මේ definition වල තියෙන වෙනස. So here it says includes tangible or intangible asset, currency, goodwill, know-how, property, a right to income or future income, benefit that lasts longer than 12 months and a part of an asset. So these are the things that we can consider as an asset. So what is the meaning for the investment asset? Investment asset means a capital asset. So because of that, first of all, we can consider about the capital asset. So capital asset definition says, capital asset means each of the following assets. So it says means. Means කියන වචනේ තිබුණොත් මෙන්න මේ ಜಾති වලින් පිටට කිසිම එකක් ගැන අපිට සලකන්න බෑ. So means land or building, a membership interest in a company, partnership or trust, a security or other financial asset, an option, right or other interest in an asset referred to in the foregoing paragraphs, but excludes trading stock or a depreciable asset. So I think now you can remember, if we have a gain from realization of a capital asset, that gain should be a part of the business income. So here, gains from the realization of capital assets and liabilities. So here you have given what are the capital assets. If we are receiving some gain from realization of a capital asset, that income also should be considered under business income. Suppose we have a land, suppose we have a building, it should be a capital asset. But if it is a depreciable asset, then we cannot consider it as a capital asset. So for land, it is definitely a capital asset because lands are not depreciating. But sometimes it can be a trading stock of a businessman. What kind of businessman? Suppose that person's business nature of the business is land developing. ඉඩම් විකුණන කෙනෙක් ගත්තොත් ඉඩම් විකුණන කෙනෙකුගේ trading stock එක කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? ඉඩම් විකුණන කෙනෙකුගේ trading stock means a land. So for that kind of person, that kind of business, we cannot consider that land as a capital asset. So you should keep that in your mind. එතකොට land විකුණන කෙනෙක්ගේ නම් විතරක් අපිට land එක capital asset එකක් කියලා සලකන්න බෑ. එහෙම නැති අවස්ථාවලදී land means a capital asset. Then trading stock. So you know what are the trading stocks. So it should exclude. So trading stock means assets owned by a person that are sold or intend to be sold in the ordinary course of a business. ඒකට මේක හොඳටම දන්නවා. භාණ්ඩ විකුණන කෙනෙක් අතේ තියෙන ස්ටොක් එක මොනක it can be either in work in progress inventories ඕන විදියකින් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. It should be a trading stock. It is for a sold, it is a sold one or intended to be sold. එතකොට විකුණුවා හෝ විකුණන්න තියෙන in the ordinary course of a business. අන්න ඒක හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ. If it is in the ordinary course of a business. the business purpose එකක් වෙනුවෙන් තියාගෙන ඉඳලා විකුණන එකක් තමයි trading stock වෙන්නේ. Then now we can again move to the investment asset. Depreciable asset also should be considered because it should be excluded from the capital asset. So what are the depreciable assets? Depreciable assets means an asset to the extent to which it is employed in the production of income from a business. So very important wordings are there. There should be an asset and that asset should be used in the production of income from a business. That means for the production of income from a business, we use some assets. That kind of assets can be considered as a depreciable asset. But it excludes goodwill, interest in land, because land is not a depreciable asset. අපි කවුරුත් දන්නවනේ land එකක් කවදාවත් depreciate වෙන්නේ නැහැනේ appreciate වුණාට. So it is a interest in land. Membership interest in an entity and trading stock. So these kind of things cannot be a depreciable asset. So for the purpose of this depreciable asset, that asset should be used in the production of income from a business. එතකොට මෙන්න මේ වචන හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ. Depreciable asset එකක් වෙන්න නම් definitely it should be used in the production of income from a business. Business income එකක් වෙනුවෙන් පාවිච්චි කරන එකකට විතරයි depreciable asset එකක් කියන්න පුළුවන්. So when we are considering the capital asset, it should exclude trading stock or depreciable asset. Okay, then we can go to the investment asset definition. It says, investment asset means a capital asset held as part of an investment. So, what it says? It should be a capital asset, but it should be held as part of an investment. There are some assets. That asset is held as part of a business. But for the purpose of investment asset, that asset should be held as part of an investment. But it excludes the principal place of residence of an individual. That means our living home. Our living home is excluded. But that living home should be owned by the individual continuously for the 3 years. 3 years should be owned by that individual, and at least 2 of these 3 years should be lived in that house. එතකොට මෙන්න මේ ටික ඉස්සරහ අපේ වැඩවලදී ගොඩක් අවශ්‍ය වෙන නිසා ටිකක් හොඳට තේරුම් ගන්න. Capital asset can be considered as an investment asset if that capital asset is held as an investment. But it excludes a living home if that home owned by that individual for 3 years and lived in that house at least for 2 years. අවුරුදු 3ක් අයිතිව තිබිලා අවුරුදු 2ක් අඩුම තරමේ පදිංචි වෙලා හිටියා නම් that ඒ වගේ දේවල් මෙතනින් අයින් වෙනවා. මම මේ ගැන පැහැදිලි කරන්නම් තව ටිකකින්. ඇයි මෙහෙම මේකට කිව්වේ කියලා. Okay. Now I have a question. Suppose there is a land. Suppose there is a land. I use that land for the purpose of business. Under which category I have to mention that land? Under which asset? I have a land. I use that land for the purpose of business. For the purpose of business. Under which asset I have to categorize it? Investment asset or capital asset? I need your answer. Oh, trading stock? How can we consider it as a trading stock here? I have a land. I use that land for the business purpose. Business purpose means in that land, I have constructed my building, showroom. That kind of land. I'm considering that kind of land. Oh, it is in easy. Two. I have two answers. That is, you say it is investment asset. Then okay, then business purpose. Yes, it is a business asset. I use that land for the purpose of business. It is a capital asset, but we use it for the business purpose. So we call it business asset. So if I have a land and I use that land as an investment, then only I can consider that land as an investment asset. මේක හොඳට තේරුම් ගන්න. ඉඩමක් තියෙනවා. මේ ඉඩම capital asset එකක් වෙනවා. මේ capital asset එක investment asset එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ capital asset එක investment purpose තියාගෙන හිටියොති. What do you call by this investment purpose? What is the meaning of investment purpose? Investment purpose means I have that land. I have purchased that land for the investment purpose. That means I am not using that land for the business purpose. Business purpose use කරනවා කියන්නේ land seller කෙනෙක් කියන අදහස නෙවෙයි මම කතා කරන්නේ. Use කරන්නේ business purpose. මගේ ඉඩම තමයි business එක කරන්නේ. මගේ ඉඩමේ තමයි stores තියෙන්නේ. මගේ ඉඩමේ තමයි parking තියෙන්නේ business එකට පාවිච්චි කරන. So that land is used for the business purpose. So I have another land. I brought it as an investment. මට තියෙනවා තවත් කොහේ හරි land එකක්. මට ආරංචියක් යනවා හරි අඩු ගානකට land එකක් තියෙනවා කියලා. මම දන්නවා මේ පැත්තේ land එකක් ගත්තොත් නම් හොඳයි අනාගතයේදී හොඳට දියුණු වෙන පැත්තක්. ඒකට මගේ කිසිම intention එකක් නෑ. I don't have any intention to do a business in that land. But as an investment, I purchased that land. So the land, accordingly, land can be either capital asset that is used for the business purpose or a land that is used for the investment purpose. එතකොට land එක එකම විදියක අපි land එක කියන වචනේ පාවිච්චි කරොත් සමහර වෙලාවට මේ land එක අපිට පාවිච්චි වෙනවා අපේ business එක කරගෙන යාම සඳහා. සමහර වෙලාවට මේ land එක අපි පාවිච්චි කරනවා investment purpose එකට අපි කවදා හෝ මේ land එක අපි ළඟ තියාගෙන මොන හරි ආදායමක් උපයනවා. එහෙම මොකක් හෝ අවශ්‍යතාවක් එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි මේ land එක ගන්නේ business එකට සඳහා පාවිච්චි කරන්න නෙවෙයි. So ඒ වගේ අවස්ථාවකදී මේ land එකට අපි කියන්නේ investment asset එකක් කියලා. එතකොට එකම land එක business asset එකක් business purpose පාවිච්චි කරපු land එකක් වුණොත් විතරයි we can consider that gain as a business income. Here gains from the realization of capital assets and liability. So don't consider the liabilities at this moment, but you should know the land seller selling gains from the realization of a capital asset. The most suitable example is a land. If we are selling my land that I use for the business purpose, ඒ කියන්නේ මගේ ව්‍යාපාරයක් කරගෙන ගිය land එක මගේ බිස්නස් එක කරගෙන ගියා යම් ලෑන්ඩ් එකක ඒ ලෑන්ඩ් එකෙන් කොටසක් මම විකුණනවා එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ බිස්නස් එක කරගෙන යනකොට මගේ පාකින් වලට එහෙම නැත්නම් මගේ වෙයාහවුස් එකට කොහෙට හරි පාවිච්චි කරපු ලෑන්ඩ් එකක් මම විකුණනවා at that time the gain from that realization of that land should be considered under business income මෙන්න මේක හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න so it can be a business asset, not the investment asset. එතකොට මේ capital asset එක අපිට කොටස් දෙකකට බෙදෙනවා. One is a investment asset, the other one is a දැන් නෑනේ මම ඒක වෙනම slide එකක දාලා තිබුණා ඒක අයින් වෙලා. Capital asset can be divided into two. One is business asset, one is investment asset. For the investment asset, we have given a definition, but for the business asset, we have not given a specific definition. But if we are using capital assets for the business purpose, at that time, that income should be categorized under capital asset. But if we have a gain on the selling of that business asset, it should be categorized under business asset. But we should keep very important thing. That is, if it is a trading stock. ඒ කියන්නේ land එකක් විකුණනවා business purpose එකට මෙයාගේ ළඟ තියාගෙන එයාගේ trading stock එක විදියට තිබුණොත් ඒක අපි capital asset එකක් කියන්නේ නැහැ. It should be a consideration received in respect of a trading stock. එතකොට මෙයා land developer කෙනෙක් නම් එයාගේ අතේදී මේ land එක trading stock එකක් වෙන නිසා it is not a capital asset but it is a trading stock. Then the next exclusion is depreciable asset. If that land is a depreciable asset, then again we should not consider it as a capital asset. But land is not a depreciable asset because under depreciable asset definition, we have to exclude it. එතකොට land කියන එක depreciable asset එකක් වෙන්නේ නැති නිසා we are excluding it. But if we are considering a building, what kind of asset is a building? What kind of asset is a building? Okay. හරි මට කවුරු හරි කියන්නේ building එක කියන්නේ මොන වගේ asset එකක්ද? Now it is categorized under capital asset, but in the definition itself, it says to exclude trading stock or a depreciable asset. Under the depreciable asset definition, it says, means an asset to the extent to which it is employed in the production of income from a business. Employed in the production of income from a business. ඒ කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? අපි මේ asset එක පාවිච්චි කරනවා in the production of income from a business. business income එකක් විදියට asset එකක් පාවිච්චි කරනවා නම් that income, that asset should be a depreciable asset. But we are excluding this kind of things. ඒ කියන්නේ land එකක් තිබුණොත් business purpose පාවිච්චි කරන it should be excluded from the depreciable asset. Therefore, it is still in the capital asset. But if we are considering a building, that building can be employed in the production of income from a business. So, that building can be a depreciable asset in the hands of a businessman. If we are using that building for the purpose of the production of income. For an example, our stores, our factory building, our office building, all buildings are used in the production of income. At that time, it will be a depreciable asset. So we have another building in very rural area with this investment asset. We have already purchased a land in very rural area. Our purpose is not to use that land and building for the business purpose. At that time, that building can be a part of the business income and it is not a depreciable asset, then it can be an investment asset. So at that time, if it is an investment asset, it cannot be considered as a depreciable asset because since it is an investment asset, we are not using that investment asset in the production of income from a business. Therefore, a building in the hands of a businessman, that building can be a depreciable asset, but in the hands of that businessman, but if that building is not used for the business, and if that person use that building as an investment asset, that at that time, it will be an investment asset. මං කියපු ටික තේරුණාද නැද්ද? Equipments used for manufacturing purpose. Disposal of that business income. Yes, if we are using equipment for the manufacturing purpose, that is considered as a depreciable asset. If we are disposing that depreciable asset, it is a part of the business income. එතකොට දැන් මෙන්න මේක හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ. මම කිව්වා capital asset එකක් තිබුණා. If that capital asset is used for the business, then after realization of that capital asset, that gain should be considered under business income. If we have a depreciable asset and if after disposing, realizing that depreciable asset, the gain should be categorized under business income. හරි. දැන් මේ ටික හොඳටම තේරුණාද කියලා කියන්න. මොකද අපේ ගණන් පුරාවටම මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න අපිට එනවා. හරි. කාට හරි මේ ගැන ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවද? මම මෙතනදී කිව්වේ depreciable asset එක කොටස් දෙකකට බෙදෙනවා. මේ capital asset එක කොටස් දෙකකට බෙදෙනවා. capital asset එක බෙදන්න කලින් අපි capital asset එකෙන් අයින් කරනවා trading stock එකක් හරි depreciable asset කියන එක. depreciable asset එකට වෙනම definition එකක් තියෙනවා. යම් asset එකක් depreciable asset එකක් වෙන්න නම් ඒ asset එක business purpose පාවිච්චි කරපු asset එකක් වෙන්න ඕන. business එක කියන්නේ manufacturing කරන කෙනෙක් machine එකක්, ලී බඩුවක්, වාහනයක් ඕනෑම දෙයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. land එක depreciable asset එකක් නෙවෙයි කියලා අයින් කරලා තියෙනවා. building එකක් පාවිච්චි කරනවා manufacturing purpose, බඩු trading purpose, එතකොට business එකට පාවිච්චි කරන building එකක්. ඒ වගේ බිල්ඩින් මෙතනින් අයින් වෙනවා. ඒතර මෙතන ඉතුරු වෙන්නේ බිස්නස් සඳහා පාවිච්චි නොවන ඇසෙට්ස් විතරයි. එතකොට බිස්නස් සඳහා පාවිච්චි නොවන වෙනත් ඇසෙට්ස් තිබුණොත් එහෙම මේ ලෑන්ඩ් වගේ දේවල් ඒක අපි කිව්වා capital assets used for the business කියලා. එතකොට එයාටම තියෙන්න පුළුවන් තව ලෑන්ඩ් එකක් බිස්නස් එකට පාවිච්චි නොකරන we can consider that land as an investment asset. එතකොට ලෑන්ඩ්ම තමයි. ඉඩම්ම තමයි. හැබැයි ඉඩමේ intention එක මොකක්ද? intention එක අනුව we can categorize that land under capital assets or under investment asset. Okay. So these are the definitions for assets. So this definition is important for the purpose of investment also. So because of that, now I explain very small thing according under the investment as investment income. So if we have a building and we have rented out that building and we consider that building as an investment asset, at that time that should be categorized under investment asset category. එතකොට අපි rent එකට දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් හිතන්න කවුරු හරි බිස්නස්මන් කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. එයාට බිල්ඩින් ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. මේ බිල්ඩින් ඔක්කොම එයා බිස්නස් එකට පාවිච්චි කරනවා. හැබැයි මේ අතර එයාට තවත් ලෑන්ඩ් එකකුයි බිල්ඩින් එකකුයි තියෙනවා. එයා කිසිසේත්ම මේක බිස්නස් එක වෙනුවෙන් නෙවෙයි පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ. එයාට ආරංචි වෙනවා අඩු ගාණකට කවදා හරි ලොකු ගාණකට විකුණන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා හිතන විදිහේ බිල්ඩින් එකක් ලෑන්ඩ් එකක් හම්බ වෙනවා. මේ ලෑන්ඩ් should categorize කරන්න ඕනේ investment asset විදිහට. හැබැයි for that building we cannot give capital allowances because that building is considered as an investment asset. For the investment buildings, we cannot give depreciation because that building should be used for the business to give depreciation. ඒතර අන්න එක හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න. ලෑන්ඩ් එකක් එක අවස්ථාවකදී කැපිටල් ඇසෙට් එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එයාගේම තවත් ලෑන්ඩ් එකක් ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් ඇසෙට් එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එක්කෙනෙකුගේම බිස්නස් ඇසට් එකක් වෙච්ච බිල්ඩින් එකක් එක්කෙනෙකුට බිල්ඩින් එකක් එක්කෙනෙක්ගේ අතේදී බිස්නස් ඇසට් එකක් වෙනවා. ඒ පුද්ගලයාගේම තවත් බිල්ඩින් එකක් ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් ඇසට් එකක් වෙනවා. බිස්නස් ඇසට් උන බිල්ඩින් එකකට විතරයි ඩිප්‍රිසියේෂන් දෙන්න පුළුවන්. අනිත් බිල්ඩින් එකට බිස්නස් ඩිප්‍රිසියේෂන් දෙන්න බෑ. අනිත් බිල්ඩින් එකෙන් අපිට ලැබෙනවා රෙන්ට් ඉන්කම් එකක්. මේ බිල්ඩින් එකෙන් අපිට රෙන්ට් ඉන්කම් ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි ඒක බිස්නස් එකට පාවිච්චි කරලා we are using that building for the production of income. So these are the differences between these assets. So if we are having a gain after realization of this capital asset that is used for the business, it is a part of the business asset. If we are having a gain after realization of a depreciable asset, that gain also should be categorized under business income. But if we are having a gain from the realization of a capital asset held as an investment, that income should be categorized under investment income, not the business income. අපි ඉන්වෙස්ට්මන්ට් ඉන්කම් ගැන කතා කරනකොට මේ ගැන තවදුරටත් කතා කරමු. Okay. If you have a question, now you can ask. Because now we are going to move to the deduction rules. So prior to that, if you have, you can ask some questions. Okay, that means you don't have questions. ඒ කියන්නේ හොඳටම පැහැදිලි වුණා කියන එකද? හොඳටම තේරුණා කියන එකද ප්‍රශ්න අහන්නේ නැහැ කියන එකේ තේරුම? Okay. Now we can move to the deduction rules. So deduction rules. So what are the meaning of these deduction rules? Why do we have deduction rules? That means under these items, under this subsection 2 and subsection 3, we have given some items that we have to include and that we have to exclude. So you can see the items that we have to include. That means service fee, consideration. So service fee and consideration means some items that is a gross amount. Gross amount means the total income we are receiving after providing services or after selling our products. But only for the gain, the third one that is under C, we have a gain. Then under the next one also there is a gain. But here first one and second one, it says only the income. So for the purpose of taxation, mainly under business income and investment income, we should not consider the income but the gain or profit. Gains or profits. Here, gains or profits. So we do not consider the income but the gains or profits. That means we are taxing not the income, but income means the gross income, but the profit. So here I have included all the items we have included are income. පේනව නේද මෙතන තියෙන income එක අපිට විකුණලා ලැබෙන ගාන මුළු ගාන තියෙන. But we cannot tax the income. We should tax the gains and profits. So gains and profits means assessable income. So I think you can remember we have already calculated assessable income from employment. But at that time I explained that deductions are not allowable under employment income. So because of that, total gross income should be considered as an assessable income from employment. But for the purpose of business and investment, assessable income is not the income but the profit. Profit means not the book profit, but the profit calculated in accordance with the provisions of the Inland Revenue Act. So now we are going to calculate that gain or profit. That means assessable income from business or investment. So for that purpose, first of all, we are considering the business income, but deduction rules are similar to both business income and investment income. Because of that, I will explain that deduction rules all together. So now after that, we can divide them into two sources. So now we know under subsection 2 and subsection 3, we know what are the items we have to include as an income. Now we are going to discuss about the deductions from that income. So that deduction rules should be read very carefully. That should be kept in your mind because that is very important. After deducting expenses in accordance with the provisions of the Inland Revenue Act, we can calculate assessable income from business. මං හිතන්නේ තේරෙන්න ඇති. අපි ඉන්කම් එක තමයි කලින් සැලකුවේ. නමුත් බිස්නස් ටැක්ස් පර්පස් අපි සලකන්න ඕනේ gains or profits. ඒ කියන්නේ අපේ පනත අනුව නම් ඒක accessible income from business. එතකොට accessible income එහෙම නැත්නම් gains and profits should be calculated based on the income tax law. So deduction rules are provided for that purpose. එතකොට මේ deduction rules අනුව තමයි we should deduct expenses to calculate accessible income from business. So these deduction rules are given not only for the business income calculation, but for the investment income calculation too. එතකොට මේ දෙකම වෙනුවෙන් තමයි Okay. The deduction rules are provided under section 10, from section 10. It says deductions will be discussed relevant to business income and investment income. So for a second, we can move to the act. Then I can show you the way it has been provided. Okay. So this is the Income Tax Act, Consolidated Act. In this act, here deductions are given under the act under section 10. It says general deduction. Deduction rule, this is subsection 1. Under subsection 1, we have A, B. Under B, we have several Roman deduction rules. Then subsection 2, this is a new inclusion, subsection 2A, under 2023 amendment. Here, number 4 of 2023 Amendment Act. This inclusion is according to that Amendment Act. Then you can see another deduction rules. This is section 11 for main deduction. After that, section 12 to 19, we have specific deduction rules. So we can go through this document or we can go through this slide. Tell me later or now and through which document we can go through the session. Because either we can use this document to do this session explanation or we can use presentation slides. ඔගොල්ලෝ කැමති කොයි presentation slides වලින් මේක යන්නද මෙහෙම යන්න කියන එක මට කියන්න. එතකොට ඔයගලන්ට වැඩිපුර මතක තියෙන විදිහින් අපිට මේක කරන්න පුළුවන්. Okay. In the act, it says all relevant amendment acts are mentioned in the act under this corner. I will start the presentation through the presentation slide because I have included some examples. So because of that, I am doing the presentation through that presentation slide. But if you wish to do the presentation through this document, that means through the act, please let me know. Okay, now you know what are the general deduction rules, what are the main deduction on section 11, and specific deductions are provided from section 12 to section 19. Now we can move to the general deductions under section 10. Under section 10, it says under subsection under paragraph A, it says no deduction shall be made in calculating person's income from employment. So that is why I explained that the deductions are not allowable for the calculation of assessable income from employment. එතකොට මම හිතලා කියපු දෙයක් නෙවෙයි පනතෙන් තමයි කියන්නේ deductions are not allowable for the calculation of an assessable income from employment. Then under item B, it says some deductions are not allowable in calculating person's income. So now you can understand the general deduction, section 10 says the deductions that are not allowed for the deduction. That means general deduction rule, main deduction rule, and specific deduction rules are provided from section 10 to section 19. General deductions explain the deductions that are not allowable as a deduction. එතකොට අඩු කරන්න ඉඩ නොදෙන වියදම් තමයි section 10 වලින් කතා කරන්නේ. So first one is no deductions are allowable to deduct under employment income. Second one is some deductions are not allowable. Some deductions are not allowable. So what are those? Some deductions are not allowable. These are the not allowable expenses under subsection 1 of section 10 under part B. First one is domestic expenses incurred by the person. So for the domestic expenses, we have a specific definition provided under section 197. The next one is tax payable under this act. That means when we are calculating the income tax, the income tax payable under this act is not a deductible expenditure. EPIT is not a deductible expenditure. Capital gain is not a deductible expenditure. මොකද ඒ taxes calculate කරන්නේ මේ පනත හරහා අපේ පනත යටතේ ගෙවන බදු මේ පනත මේ අපේ tax calculation එකේදී not deductible. The next one is interest, penalty, fines payable to government or a political subdivision of a government of any country for breach of any written law. That means if we have to make a payment as an interest, penalty or fine in respect of the breach of any written law. නීතියක් කඩලා ගෙවන්න වෙන්නේ penalty එක ආදායම් බදු ගෙවන්න ගණනය කරනකොට අඩු කරන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ. අඩු කරන්න දුන්නොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? Our profit will be minimized. අපි මොකද්ද මේ කරන්නේ? ආදායමෙන් වියදම අඩු කරලා ඉතුරු ටික තමයි tax කරන්නේ. එතකොට tax කරනකොට මේ ಜಾති වියදම අඩු කරන්න දෙන්න එපා කියලා කියනවා. Domestic expenses, I will explain it later. Then the taxes payable under this act, that means if a person has deducted an income tax, that is not a deductible expenses. Then interest, penalty or fine. If that is paid for breach of any written law, that is also not a deductible expenditure. So these are the items that provided under section 197 as domestic expenses. මෙතන පේනවනේ. Domestic expenses deduct කරන්න දෙන්න එපා කියනවා. It is the disallowable amount. So for the domestic expenses, we have section 197. I have given it here. So domestic expenses means we can categorize that domestic expenses under 3 categories. First one is individual incurs expenditure in respect of himself. Individual incurs expenditure in respect of himself. Then the next one, individual incur expenditure for another person. Another person incurs expenditure for that individual. That is a separate thing. Then the third one is expenditure referred to in subsection 1 and 2 shall include interest incurred with respect to money borrowed for that purposes. That is also a domestic expenses. That means domestic expenses are not allowed as a deduction when we are calculating the business income. The first domestic expense, it has been given under 3 categories. First category is individual incurs expenditure in respect of himself. That means that individual incurs that expenditure in respect of himself. So means in maintaining individual, including the individual, including in providing shelter, as well as meals, refreshment, entertainment, or other leisure activities. So that is why our own food, our house payments cannot be deducted when we are calculating the business income. That means, suppose I am doing a business when I am deducting expenses, my own expenses cannot be deducted as a deduction from that business income. මගේ කෑම බීම, මගේ නවාතැන් සඳහා දරන වියදම්, my rent expenditure cannot be deducted. But if that rent expenditure is for the purpose of business, it can be deducted. හැබැයි මම පදිංචි වෙලා ඉන්න ගේ කුලියට දුන්න එකට අදාළ rent expense එක මගේ කෑමට දරන වියදම් cannot be deducted. My entertainment, my refreshment, my leisure payments for my leisure activities, that kind of expenses are not allowed as a deduction. In the individual commuting from home, we are traveling from home to somewhere. That expenditure cannot be deducted. In acquiring clothing, including shoes for the individual. ඒතර මගේ ඇඳුම් පැළඳුම් සඳහා දරන වියදම් අඩු කරන්න බෑ. But I can deduct some expenses incurred for clothing. What kind of clothing? Other than clothing that is not suitable for wearing outside of work. What kind of clothing? Can you give me an example? Yes, traveling from home to business place cannot be deducted. Yes, it cannot be deducted. It cannot be deducted. Okay, give me an example for part 3. Uniforms, very good. Uniforms. So, uniform expenses can be allowed as a deduction, but that uniform should not be suitable for wearing outside of work. There are some uniforms that can be wear for the outside. What kind of uniform? You can see some saris in the Navaloka hospital. They are wearing, ladies are wearing a sari. That sari can be wear outside of the work. Can they? Hotel service. Yes, chef. Chef is wearing a uniform. Can that uniform be wear outside the work? එයාට පුළුවන් දර තොප්පියක් දාගෙන ලොකු ලෝගෝවක් දාගෙන පාරේ යන්න. No, he can't. So that is a uniform. හැබැයි අපි නෝනලා දැකලා තියෙනවනේ අපේ තැන්වල ඉන්නවා. සලස්සන සාරිය ඇඳලා එකම පාටි මේ සාරිය ඇඳගෙන පාරේ යන්න පුළුවන්. ඕන තැනක යන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට ඒ වගේ ඒවා යුනිෆෝම් කියලා සලකන්නේ නැහැ for the purpose of domestic expenditure. Black and white dress. ඒකට යුනිෆෝම් වුණත් පාරේ අඳින්න බැරි නම් අන්න ඒක තමයි යුනිෆෝම් එකක් වෙන්නේ. අපිට මග තොටට ඕන තැනකට ඇඳලා යන්න බැරි එකක් තමයි මෙතන අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන්. වියදමක් විදිහට අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන්. The next one, in educating the individual, other than education that is directly relevant to a business conducted by the individual. And that does not lead to a degree or diploma. And here the term and. That is directly relevant to the business, but that does not lead to a degree or diploma. Degree එකකට හරි diploma එකකට හරි අදාළ වෙන වියදමක් නම් මේ education expenses are not allowed as a deduction. In paying any personal debts, including credit card debts of the individual. එතකොට credit card අරන් තියෙනවා නම් ඒව අඩු කරන්න ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ. So I have explained the expenses incurred by an individual in respect of himself. එයා වෙනුවෙන් දරන වියදම් අඩු නොකරන්න දෙන්නේ නැතිව තමයි මේවා මොනම හේතුවක් නිසාවත් අඩු කරන්න ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ. The next one is where another person incurs expenditure in making a payment to or providing any other benefit for an individual. The expenditure shall be domestic expenditure, expect, except to the extent that. Then who make the payment? Another person make the payment to an individual. That means suppose I am an individual. So to me, another person makes some payments as a benefit. So that kind of expenses cannot be deducted. The payment or benefit shall be included in calculating the income of the individual. That means another person makes the payment. That means I am making the payment for another person. I can deduct that expenditure as an expenditure if that another person included that income as an income for the purpose of income tax. That means I am making a payment to another person. That person should consider that income as a income of that individual when calculating that person's income. එයාගේ tax purpose එකට එයා මේක එකතු කරලා තියෙන්න ඕන. එතකොට විතරයි මගේ මම දරපු වියදම අඩු කරන්න දෙන්නේ. Otherwise it is a domestic expenditure. The individual provides consideration of an equal market value for the payment or benefit. So up to this extent, this kind of expenses can be allowed as a deduction. Otherwise, expenses made for another person is not a deductible expenditure. So sometimes we are making payment for another person. The value is more than the equal market value, more than the market value. That the additional amount is considered as a domestic expenditure. මේ වෙන්න පුළුවන් නේද? අපි තවත් කෙනෙක් වෙනුවෙන් පේමන්ට් එකක් කරා කියනවා අපේම කෙනෙක්ට වෙන්න පුළුවන් පේමන්ට් එක 100ක් ගෙවන්න ඕන තැනට මාකට් වැලියු එක 100යි. හැබැයි අපි 500ක් විතර ගෙවනවා. අන්න ඒ අවස්ථාවේදී 100 දක්වා අපිට ඉඩක් දෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ ඉතුරු 400 ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නෑ අඩු කරන්න. මම තව කෙනෙක් වෙනුවෙන් වියදමක් දරනවා. මම දරන වියදම අඩු කරන්න දෙන්නේ. ඒක ලබන කෙනා යාගේ ඉන්කම් එක කැල්කියුලේට් කරනකොට ඒ වියදම කන්සිඩර් කරා නම් විතරයි. එහෙම නැත්නම් අඩු කරන්න දෙන්න බෑ. The amount of the expenditure so small to make it unreasonable or administratively impracticable to account for it. එතකොට මෙන්න මේ වගේ අවස්ථාවක මම තවත් කෙනෙක් වෙනුවෙන් බෙනිෆිට් එකක් දෙනවා. ඒ බෙනිෆිට් එක අනිත් එක්කෙනාගේ අතේදී සලකන්න බැරි තරම් පොඩි දෙයක් වුණොත් අන්න ඒ වගේ වෙලාවට මම එක වීදමක් විදිහට අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ කියන්නේ මම තව කෙනෙකුට කරන බෙනිෆිට් එක මම තව කෙනෙක්ට තේ එකක් දෙනවා. ඒත් ඒක එයාගේ ඉන්කම් පර්පස් එකට ගන්න තරම් වටින තරම් දෙයක් නෙවෙයි. අන්න ඒ වගේ වුණ වෙලාවට ඒක මගේ වීදමක් විදිහට අඩු කරන්න දෙනවා. Then item 3 says expenditure referred to in subsection 1 and 2. That means I have mentioned under subsection 1 the expenditure incurred in respect of himself. The second one is another person incurs expenditure. Another person incurs expenditure. So for that two expenses, for making that two expenses, sometimes we can borrow money because we don't have enough money. At that time, we can borrow money from a bank and we pay that expenses. But for that bank loan, we should pay interest. That interest also a domestic expenses. මොකක්ද එකෙන් කියන්නේ? item number 1 වල කියනවා තමන් වෙනුවෙන් දරන වියදම් අඩු කරන්න දෙන්න එපා කියනවා. තමන් අනුන් වෙනුවෙන් දරන වියදම් අඩු කරන්න දෙන්න එපා කියලා කියනවා. ඒ ලබන කෙනාට ඒක ආදායමක් විදිහට පෙන්වන්නේ නැත්තම් හරි ඒක ඊටාම කුඩා amount එකක් හරි මාකට් වැලියු එකට සමාන ගාණක් නම් එයා දරලා තියෙන්නේ. එතකොට තුන්වෙනි එකෙන් කියන්නේ මේ කියපු පාර්ට් දෙකටම වියදම කරන්න එයා ලෝන් එකක් ගත්තොත් ඒ ලෝන් එකක වෙනුවෙන් ගෙවන interest also should be considered as a domestic expenses. So that interest also cannot be allowed as a deduction. So these are the items that we should consider as a domestic expenses. So under section 10(1)(b), the first one is domestic expenditure that is not allowable as a deduction. So I have already explained what are the domestic expenses. So number 2 I have already explained. Number 3 also I have already explained. Then we can move to number 4. Expenditure of any other deduction to the extent incurred by a person in deriving exempt amounts of final withholding payments. That means sometimes we are incurring expenditure for all my business income, relevant to all my business income. But some business income are tax exempt. So I think you can remember when we are calculating the business income, after including each and every income type, the next step is to exclude exempt amounts and final withholding payments. Suppose we have income type, the altogether amount is 100,000. Out of that 100,000, we have to remove exempt amount, suppose that is 10,000. From that 10,000, 100,000, 10,000 is tax exempt. Therefore, first of all, we have to remove that income. Now we have only liable income. That means 90,000 is the liable amount. So we are calculating gains and profits of that liable income, not the gross income. That means total income minus exempt and final withholding payments. Then we have net income. So we are deducting these deduction rules only for that liable income. So because of that, if we have some expenditure that are relevant for the exempt amounts and final withholding payments, we should disallow that amount because that exempt amounts and final withholding payments are not included in the income. We are deducting expenses from the income to calculate assessable income. For that calculation, we have to consider only liable income. That is why we are deducting exempt and final withholding amounts. Because of that, if there are some expenses that are relevant to that exempt amounts of final withholding payments, that amounts also not allowed as a deduction from the liable income. That is why we are disallowing, removing that expenditure. Removing means we cannot allow as a deduction. The next one is retirement contributions. Unless they are included in calculating the income of an employee. Retirement contributions. That means if we have a retirement fund, so first of all, we are contributing retirement to that fund. After that, from that fund, that retirement benefits are paid to the server, their members. So if the retirement contribution is made to the fund that is approved by the Commissioner General, that is also not allowable as a deduction. The next one is dividends of a company. So if you are familiar with the account set of the organization, at that time, dividends can be deducted from their profit. But For the purpose of income tax, we do not consider the profit after deducting dividends. We consider before deducting the dividend, profit before deducting the dividend. So dividends are not a deductible amount for the calculation of assessable income. For the dividends, we have a definition under section 195. Then outlays or expenses for entertainment. For the expenses incurred for the entertainment also not a deductible amount. For the entertainment, we have a specific definition under section 195. Then an amount that has transferred to his financial accounts to a reserve or provision. That means sometimes we are not making the payment, but that is a nominal value. We are reserving or transferring to reserve account or provision account. So that kind of reserves and provisions are not allowed as a deduction. Suppose it is a reserve for some reserves accounts. අපි සංචිතවලට මාරු කරනවා කියන්නේ. Sometimes we are making some provisions. Doubtful debt provision, then depreciation provision. What kind of provisions are? What are the other provisions? අපි කියනවනේ එක එක provisions වලට ඒ කියන්නේ සල්ලි සැබෑවට දරන්නේ just reserve some amounts. So that kind of things are not allowable as a deduction. Then the next one is amounts incurred on lottery, betting or gambling other than amounts incurred for conducting a business or lotteries, betting or gambling. That means if we are incurring some expenses for the purchase of lottery, betting or gambling, that is not deductible. But if we are conducting a business of lotteries, betting or gambling, then any expenditure can be deducted according to these provisions. But if we are purchasing lottery, betting or gambling, that expenditure is not allowable. Then the next one is taxes or other levies specified by the Commissioner General. So for this purpose, we have already issued a gazette notification. According to that gazette notification, there are some taxes and levies that are not allowed as a deduction. If some taxes are not provided under that gazette notification, that means that is allowed as a deduction. So after that, we have made some amendment to this section, this item. Then item two threes are there, so I have to change it. Then the item 3 is because up to here we have considered number 1, then 2, this is 2, this should be 2. It says a deduction for a payment shall not be allowed until the tax withheld has been paid to the Commissioner General. That means for withholding agents, when they are making some payment to another person, at that time, they should deduct taxes if it is provided under the Inland Revenue Act, they should deduct the taxes and should pay that amount to the department. If anyone is not deducted that amount and not paid to the department, the total expenditure is not allowable as a deduction. So because of that, this is a responsibility of the taxpayer. If they are responsible for the deduction of withholding tax, at that time they should deduct that amount and they should pay it to the department. Otherwise, their total expenditure will be disallowed. Then item 3 is no deduction shall be allowed except as expressly permitted by that. So there may be several deductions that are not allowable as a deduction if it is not expressly permitted by that. The fourth one is if there are more specific deduction rules are applicable for one deduction, then most suitable one should be applied. That means from section 12 to section 19, there are a lot of specific deduction rules. If that specific deduction rules, one or more deduction rules are applied for one deduction, at that time, we have to consider the most suitable specific rule for that deduction. මොකද අපිට section 12 ඉඳලා 19 වෙනකන් deduction rules ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. මේවා වලදී සමහර වෙලාවට අපිට වඩාම එකකට වඩා දෙක තුනක් අදාළ වෙන වෙලාවට ඉතාමත්ම අදාළ වෙන එක තමයි අපි ගන්න ඕනේ. Okay, this is a new amendment. This is a new amendment made to the Principal Act. It says deductions are not allowable if that payment exceeds 500,000 and if that payment is not made through a bank. At that time, that deduction is not allowable. ලක්ෂ 5කට වඩා වැඩි ගනුදෙනුවක් කරලා තියෙනවා නම් ඒ ගනුදෙනුව මුදලින් ගෙවලා තිබුණොත් that deduction is not allowable as a deduction. So, what is the meaning of paid by cash? We wanted to encourage bank transactions rather than cash transactions. Why? Cash transactions are very difficult to trace by the department. අපිට පුළුවන් ද මුදලින් කරන ගනුදෙනු trace කරන්න. දැන් ඩොක්ටර්ස්ලා ගත්තොත් ඩොක්ටර් කෙනෙක්ට ප්‍රයිවට් හොස්පිටල් එකක මේ කන්සල්ටන්සි ඉවර වෙලා යනකොට එයාගේ අතට අර නර්ස් කරන්නේ මොකද්ද? ලියුම් කවරක දාලා සල්ලි ටික ගෙනත් දීලා යනවා. How can we trace it? We cannot trace. පිටකොටුවේ තොග වෙලෙන්දෝ ඉන්නවා. තොග වෙලෙන්දෝ බඩු ගේනවා. සල්ලි වලට විකුණනවා යනවා. How can we trace it? But if it is in a bank transaction, we can trace it through that bank statements. So that is why this provision is introduced. So according to this provision, if the payment exceeds 500,000 per transaction, at that time, that payment should be made in bank through, that means account to account pay check, account pay bank draft, credit card, debit card, electronic payment system through a bank account. So it is effective from 2023 May 8th. So, but this provision is not applicable to government institutions, financial institutions like that. So there are some definitions for bank account and the government institution and for the single transaction, because they can do that transaction in several transactions. So because of that, single transaction, if it is in single transaction, and if the transaction is made more than 500,000, at that time, that payment should be made through a bank. The bank ගිණුමක් කරහා කරන ගනුදෙනුවක් වෙන්න ඕනේ. Okay. Let's have a 10 minutes break. After that, we can start. Now it is 8:45. So 8:55 we can start again. මට වතුර චුට්ටක් පීලා එන්න ඕනේ. ඒක නිසා අපි පොඩි බ්‍රේක් එකක් ගමු. Okay, we can start. Mm. So this is the main deduction section. So I think you can understand section 10 is for the disallowable amounts. That means that are expenses that are not allowable as a deduction. Section 10 provides the deductions that are not allowable as a deduction. So section 11 is completely different thing. Section 11 says main deduction. Main deduction means the deductions that are allowable as a deduction. So in this section, it is not mentioned each and every expenditure that are allowed. But in common word, it says the expenses that are incurred during the year by the person and in the production of income from the business or investment shall be deducted. That means this deduction rule is applicable not only to the business but also to the investment. So this deduction rule is applicable to a person. That means to an individual or a company or an entity. This deduction rule is applicable both to individuals and entity, that means persons. එතන හොඳට බලන්න මේ දාලා තියෙන වචන. This is applicable to a person and income from business or investment. That means when we are calculating the business income or a investment income, that means accessible income from business or accessible income from investment, these deduction rules can be applied. But that expenditure should be incurred during the year of assessment. During the year of assessment and in the production of income. Production of income from business or in the production of income from the investment. At that time, that kind of deductions can be deducted. Expenses can be deducted, but subject to section 10. The next one is no deduction shall be allowed for an expense of capital nature. It is also mentioned under section 11. That means for the capital nature expenditure also we can incur, but that kind of a capital expenditure cannot be allowed as a deduction. Expense of a capital nature includes an expense that secure a benefit capable of lasting for, excuse me, there's a question. Yes, I have already sent it to Miss Kalhari on the same day. On the same day, I have shared it with Miss Kalhari, so you can ask from her. Okay. Then deduction, main deduction rule, section 11 says the deductions that are incurred during the year, and if it is incurred in the production of income, then that is deductible, but it restrict of deducting capital nature expenses. So what is the meaning of capital nature expenditure? That means if some expenditure benefit is capable of lasting longer than 12 months, that is a capital nature. ඒ කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? අපි දරන වියදමේ benefit එක වටිනාකම අවුරුද්දකට වඩා වැඩි කාලයකට තිබුණත් that is considered as a capital nature expenditure. So under section 11, capital nature expenses are not allowable as a deduction. Only the recurrent expenditures are allowable under section 11. So capital nature expenditure means we purchase chair, table, computer, machinery, vehicles. So that kind of assets benefit is not only for a year, but it is more than for a year. So because of that, we consider that kind of expenses are capital nature expenses. So capital nature expenses are not allowed as a deduction under Section 11. Then we can move to the specific deduction rules. So from Section 12 to Section 19, we have specific deduction rules. So up to now, do you have questions? ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න. මෙතෙක් කරපු ටිකේ. ඒ කියන්නේ මෙතෙක් කරපු ටික ඔක්කොම පැහැදිලි වගේ. No questions. No, nothing. So we can move to the specific deduction rule. So there are specific rules from section 90, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15A, 15A is a deduction rule introduced in 2021. So then section 16, 17, 18, and 19. So these are the specific deduction rules. So these specific deduction rules are applicable. Some are applicable for business income, some are applicable for investment income, and some are applicable for both. So these are the deduction rules. We can move to the next set of slides to discuss it. ප්‍රශ්න මොන හරි තියෙනවා නම් මේ ටිකේ කතා කරන්න පුළුවන්. Okay. Section 12. Section 12 is for interest expenditure, interest expenses. So that means even though we have given provision, that is section 11, section 11 says the expenses incurred in the production of income can be deducted, but if that income is an interest expenditure, then we cannot deduct that expenditure under section 11 because specific deduction rule for the interest is given under section 12. Because of that, we cannot deduct it under section 11, but we should deduct it under section 12. මේක හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න. අපිට ඕනෑම වියදමක් expenditure incurred in the production of income කියලා අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන්කම තිබුණත්, since we have given some specific deduction rules, when we are deducting that kind of expenditure, we have to apply relevant deduction rule. So interest expenditure is under section 12. It says the debt obligation, if there is an interest expenditure that is incurred under debt obligation, it shall be deducted, deemed to be incurred in the production of income. So that means we are borrowing some loan. That is the most suitable example. We are borrowing loan for the purpose of business. We call it for the production of income. We borrowed a loan for the production of income. For that income, for that loan, we are paying interest. So to the deduction of that interest under section 12, these conditions, these two conditions should be fulfilled. First one is the money borrowed under such debt obligation. මේ ණයක් ගත්තා කියන එකනේ කියන්නේ debt obligation was used to acquire an asset. That means we can borrow money, we can borrow money from a debt obligation. Using that money, that borrowed money, we can purchase some assets. And if that asset is used for the production of income, that interest can be deducted. Or if that debt obligation was incurred in the production of income, at that time also we can deduct. At that time also we can deduct that interest. Okay. That means under section 11, under section 10, under section 11, we could deduct only the expenditure that are not capital nature expenditure. If it is not a capital nature expenditure, that could be deducted under section 11. But here I have mentioned about some capital nature expenditure. I said that the assets are used, the assets are purchased based on the borrowed money. So now we have purchased an asset. That means we have incurred this borrowed money for the purpose of purchasing an asset. Purchasing an asset means that is a capital nature. If we are going to deduct this kind of expenditure under section 11, we cannot do it because we used this money to borrow a capital nature expenditure, and for that borrowed money, we have to make the interest payment. So because of that, that interest is relevant for the capital nature expenditure. So because of that, this kind of expenditure cannot be deducted under section 11. But under section 12, we can deduct it because it has given the entitlement for the deduction of capital nature expenses also. So that is the difference between section 11 and 12. මේක තේරුම් ගන්න section 11 වලින් capital nature expenses අඩු කරන්න බලය දෙන්නේ නැති වුණාට section 12 ඉඳලා අපි දිගටම කතා කරන ඒවා වල මේ capital nature වියදමුත් අඩු කිරීමේ හැකියාවක් තියෙනවා. Okay, is it okay now? Okay. So that is the difference between section 11 and section 12. That is the difference. So under section 11, capital nature expenditure cannot be incurred, can be incurred but not deductible. But under section 12, this is not the money used for the asset, but the interest paid to that borrowed money. එතකොට interest එක ගෙවීමත් අපි සලකන්නේ capital nature asset එකක් වෙනුවෙන් හින්දා that is also a part of the capital expenditure. But under section 12, we can deduct it. But not only for the purchase of asset, for the use of the production of income, but after borrowing money from a bank or financial institution, if that borrowed money used for the production of income, at that time also, that interest expenditure can be deducted as a deductible amount. So section 12 is for the interest expenditure. That interest expenditure is incurred for the debt obligation. That interest can be deducted if only if these two conditions are satisfied. So condition 1 is we can borrow money, and using that borrowed money, we can purchase assets. That assets should be used for the production of income during that year. Then only we can deduct that interest expenditure. The second condition is if we borrowed money, and using that borrowed money, we can use that borrowed money for the production of income. That means if we have a cash flow issue, we can borrow money from a bank under debt obligation, and we can use that money in the production of income. So then also interest expenditure is allowed. But this restriction is, but for the companies, there is a restriction. So this is for an individual, without any restriction, we can deduct expenditure incurred as an interest if these two conditions are fulfilled. For a company, deductions are entitled, but under section 18, it should be restricted. It should be restricted. So this is an example. Read this example and give me your answer. Mrs. Sajivani runs a salon. He borrows funds from Bank A. She used that funds to purchase some equipment for the salon. Then she uses some funds to pay rent on the premises of her salon. Then remainder of the funds she uses to pay her child's admission fees for school, and Mrs. Sanjeevani pays interest on the loan. Okay. Give me your answer. Whether that interest expenditure is allowed as a deduction or not. So what are the amounts she incurred? These are the expenses. She borrowed money. Using that borrowed money, she has made this expenditure. She purchased some equipment for her business purpose. In addition to that, she paid rent for the business premises. After that, she used some part of that borrowed money for her child's admission fee. And finally, she paid interest on the total loan. So what has happened? For that equipment, she purchased an equipment, so that is used for the business. So because of that, she can deduct that interest part under section 12. It is not deductible under section 11 because section 11 is main deduction rule. But since she is deducting an interest, for the interest deduction, we have a specific deduction rule that is 12. So because of that, she cannot apply section 11, but there is a section 12 that is more specific to the deduction. Because of that, under section 12, she can deduct that part. Then she paid rent. That rent is for her business premises. So that is also for the purpose of business, for the production of business income. So because of that is also deductible under section 12. But finally, she used part of the borrowed money to pay her child's admission fees. So that admission fee is not a part of the business. Because of that, it is not deductible. So the proportionate amount of that interest should be disallowed, because only the expenditure incurred in the production of income can be deducted. Here, this income, the child's admission fee is not not incurred in the production of income. Because of that, that proportionate amount should be disallowed. So that is section 12. Okay. If you have questions regarding that section 12, you can ask now. There may be some practical situations. What kind of practical situation? නේද? දැන් මේ වගේ දෙයක් කිව්වට ප්‍රැක්ටිකලි හරියටම ඉරවල් ගහලා වෙන් වෙලා මෙහෙම ඒව වෙන්නේ නැහනේ. එහෙම වුණොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? Suppose she sold the equipment she purchased for the business, but loan is still there. At that time, she should pay interest, but no asset. Then what will happen? Can she deduct that expenditure? මට කියන්න බලන්න කවුරු හරි. දැන් මං කිව්වනේ බිස්නස් එකට පාවිච්චි කරා. ඇසට් එකක් ගත්තා. ඒක බිස්නස් එකට පාවිච්චි කරන හින්දා තමයි අපි ඉන්ට්‍රස්ට් එක ලව් කරන්නේ අඩු කරන්න. හැබැයි ඇසට් එක පර්චේස් කරනවා. ලෝන් එක ගත්තා අවුරුදු දෙකකට කිංගවන්න. ඇසට් එක පර්චේස් කරලා පර්චේස් කරපු අවුරුද්දේම ඇසට් එක විකුණනවා. In the next year, can she deduct that interest expenditure? This is a practical situation. Can she deduct interest expenditure? Because now no asset. Because she has already sold that asset, but still loan is there. So because of that, interest should be paid. Can she deduct that expenditure, interest as an expenditure? Can she deduct it? නිකන් හිතලා බලලා කියන්න. මේ ටික බැලුවාම සාමාන්‍යයෙන් තේරෙන්න ඕන. Not eligible to deduct. I have one answer. I have only one answer. I need more answers. Because that kind of things can happen. දැන් අපි ඩිපාර්ට්මන්ට් එකේ වැඩ කරනකොට මේ වගේව තමයි අපිට වැඩි හරියෙන්නේ. එක්කෙනෙක් ළඟට ඇවිත් ඉන්නවා. බට් කියලා දාලා. ඒත් හරි උත්තරේ නෙවෙයි. නාලි. මේක තව ඩෙවලොප් කරොත් මේ ආන්සර් එක හරි. මිස්ටර් නලින්ගේ ආන්සර්. තා පොඩ්ඩක් කල්පනා කරන්න. Deductible for use period. තව ටිකක් කල්පනා කරන්න බලන්න. Two conditions are there, not only one condition. Two conditions are there. Because of that, මොකක්ද හිතෙන්නේ? Consider two conditions and answer the question. She borrowed a loan for 2 years. In the first year, she used that asset and paid interest. For that interest, deduction is available. Deduction is entitled. Then in the first year, she sold it. In the second year, machine is not available, but still bank loan is still there. In the second year also, she should pay interest expenditure. Is it deductible or not? That is my question. Is it deductible or not for the second year? What are the two conditions? What are the two conditions? Oh, no. What are the two conditions? First one is borrow a loan, obtain a loan. හරි. මම දැන් මේක පැහැදිලි කරාට පස්සෙත් උත්තරයක් දෙන්නකෝ. Two condition one is she can borrow a loan and using that borrowed loan she should purchase an asset and that asset should be used for the production of income. The second one is she can use that borrowed money for the production of income. That means එයාට ණයක් අරගෙන බඩුවක් අරගෙන බඩුව පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන් උනොත් බඩුව පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන් එයාගේ production of income වලට. එහෙම නැත්නම් එයාට ණයක් අරගෙන ගත්තු ණය පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන් එයාගේ production of income සඳහා. ඉතින් මං කිව්වේ මොකද්ද? එයා ගත්ත මොකක් හෝ asset එකක්. මේ asset එක වික්කා. මේ විකුණපු සල්ලි එයා යෙදුවා නම් මෙයාගේ production of income සඳහා. එතකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? එයාට දෙකක් කරන්න පුළුවන්. එයාට පළවෙනි එක තමයි එයා වික්කා කියලානේ මං කියන්නේ. මේ asset එක විකුණුවා. විකුණපු asset එකෙන් ආපු සල්ලි ටික මෙයා පාවිච්චි කර එයාගේ business එක කරගෙන යන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ විකුණපු සල්ලි ටිකෙන් මේ asset එක විකිණීමේ ලැබුණු සල්ලි එයා යාට personal car එකක් ගන්න පාවිච්චි කරා. ඔන්න එයා දැන් එයාගේ මේ asset එක විකුණලා කරුණු දෙකකට පාවිච්චි කරා. දැන් කියන්න පුළුවන්ද මට මොකද්ද මේකෙදි වෙන්නේ කියලා? එක්කෝ එයාට පුළුවන් මේ සල්ලි විකුණපු සල්ලි අරගෙන එයාගේ බිස්නස් එකට පාවිච්චි කරන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් එයාට පුළුවන් මේ විකුණපු සල්ලි අරගෙන එයාගේ පර්සනල් වැඩකට යොදවන්න. එතකොට මොකද්ද උත්තරේ? දැන් තේරෙනවද මං කියපුද? එතකොට how do we determine whether it is deductible or not? In the practical situation, we determine it based on the facts. So in this case, if that person sold that person's asset and you use invested or use that uh, uh, consideration for the production of income, at that time it is deductible. අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැනේ. එයා ලෝන් එකක් අරගෙන ලෝන් එක එයාගේ මොනවාද ආදායම උපයන්න පාවිච්චි කරත් එකයි ලෝන් එකෙන් වත්කමක් ගත්තා ඒ වත්කම විකුණුවා විකුණලා ඉවරලා ලැබුණ සල්ලි ආදායම උපයන්න දෙව්වත් එකයි. Therefore it is deductible both in the both situations that is deductible. හැබැයි එයා ඒක වත්කම විකුණලා ගත්තු සල්ලි පාවිච්චි කරා නම් එයාගේ පුද්ගලික පරිභෝජනයකට that is not deductible. So because of that we can determine it based on the facts of that case. So it is a practical situation. ඔන්න ඔය විදිහට තමයි අපිට ඔෆිස් එකේ වැඩ කරනකොට බලන්න වෙන්නේ ගණන් හදනකොට බොහොම පහසුවෙන් අපි යම් යම් ඩිසිෂන් ගත්තත් ප්‍රැක්ටිකල් සිටුේෂන් එකේදී ඒවා අපි හිතනවට වඩා දහස් ගුණයකින් වෙනස් ඒවා තමයි අපිට දකින්න ලැබෙන්නේ. Okay, the next section is section 13. Okay. ප්‍රශ්න එහෙම තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න. Next one is section 13. Section 13 is for allowance for trading stock. So what is the meaning of allowance for trading stock? So trading stock means assets owned by a person. Trading stock means assets owned by a person that are sold or intend to be sold in the ordinary course of business. So I have given you the definition for trading stock. That means the cost we incurred for the trading stock. But it excludes capital asset and depreciable asset. So this is the definition for trading stock. What is the meaning of the allowance for trading stock? Allowance for trading stock means equals opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock. Who can tell me the one word that we can use for this calculation? මොකද්ද මේකට කියන්නේ? This is the way of calculating allowance for trading stock. What is it? Allowance for trading stock. How do we calculate it? Allowance for trading stock. Opening stock purchase plus purchases minus closing stock. What is it? In the accounting, yes, that is cost of sale. So why do we deduct allowance for trading stock? So this is a deduction rule. Under section 13, we can deduct allowance for trading stock. In the accounting, it is cost of sales. Why do we deduct cost of sales? What is the purpose of deducting allowance for trading stock? ඇයි අපි අඩු කරන්නේ? ඇයි අපි අඩු කරන්නේ? What is the purpose of deducting cost of sales? කාටද කියන්න පුළුවන් අපි ඒ cost of sales අපිට අඩු කරන්න ඉඩ දෙන්න කියන්නේ කියලා. Under business income, what is the taxable amount? Income or the profit? Income or the profit? Which one is taxable? අපි income tax වලදී tax කරන්නේ මොකක්ද? Income or profit? What is taxable? Yes, that is profit. We are taxing profit, not the income. So under subsection 2 of section 6, I asked you to consider service fee or consideration received in respect of trading stock. What are those? Those are the income we are receiving. So if it is a consideration in respect of the trading stock, that means we consider the sales value. But for the calculation of taxes, we should calculate profit. In tax term, it is assessable income from business. So for the calculation of assessable income for the business or a profit, from the consideration from the sales value, we have to deduct cost of sales. That is why we have given this provision. Under section 13, we can deduct cost of sales. In the tax term, it is not the cost of sale, it is allowance for trading stock. But the calculation is very similar. Same way we are calculating it is as cost of sale. When we are calculating the cost of sale, we consider opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock. Similar to that calculation, for the allowance of trading stock also, we are calculating it by adding purchases to the opening stock and after removing closing stock. That is the very similar to the cost of sales. එතකොට cost of sale ම තමයි මේ අපි අඩු කරන්නේ. So the same way we are doing it, the closing stock value of trading stock of the business for the year of assessment shall be the lower of these two. That means the cost of the trading stock of the business at the end of the year or the market value of the trading stock. Whichever is the lower should be considered as a closing stock. එතකොට closing stock calculate කරන විදිහ අපිට වෙනම කියනවා. So after that, we will have allowance for trading stock. Then the way of calculating the cost of sales is given in the provision that is under section 13. That is cost of sales means, or the allowance for trading stocks means opening stock minus opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock. For the calculation of closing stock, we have given a specific way similar to the cost of sales. So that is the lower amount of the cost or the market value. Lower amount should be considered as a value of the stock. හරි. ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්නකෝ. Then the next deduction rule is repair and improvement, that is under section 14. So if we have some assets and if we are using that asset for the production of income, at that time there may be several expenses for repair or improvement. If we have that kind of expenditure to be deducted, at that time even though that expenditure is incurred in the production of income, we cannot deduct that kind of income under section 11, under main deduction. But we have to deduct that expenditure under section 14 because most specific deduction rule for the repair and improvement is section 14. So that is why we should use that amount for the deduction. So under this repair and improvement section, we have made some amendments in section under Amendment Act number Amendment Act in 2021. So for the expenses for the repair and or improvement to application of section 14, that asset should be a depreciable asset. That asset should be a depreciable asset. If for that depreciable asset, if we are making repair or improvement to that depreciable asset, then only we can use section 40. But when we are deducting that expenses, we cannot deduct total amount incurred for repair and improvement. And in addition to that, under section 14, irrespective of whether they are of a capital nature or not, that expenditure can be deducted. If we are referring to section 11, main deduction rule, under main deduction rule, we cannot deduct capital nature expenses, but if that improvement is a capital nature expenditure, but under section 14, we can deduct it. So that is the difference between section 11 and section 14. ඉතින් ඔයගලන්ට තේරෙනවා ඇති section 11 වලින් capital nature expenditure restrict කරා. අඩු කරන්න දෙන්න බෑ කිව්වා. But from section 12, there are specific deduction rules. Under that provisions, some capital nature expenses can be deducted when we are calculating assessable income from business income or investment. So this section is applicable to depreciable asset. So depreciable asset is relevant for which source? Which source? මොන source එකකටද depreciable asset relevant වෙන්නේ? මට කියන්න බලන්න assets ගැන definition එක කියනකොට මම කිව්වා. Now we are considering the depreciable asset. For the deduction under section 14, that repair or improvement should be made to a depreciable asset. Then, who can tell me to which source this section 14 is applicable? To which source this section is applicable? يعني මොන source එක යටතේ පෙන්නපු income එකකින්ද මේ වියදම අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන්. There are two sources, business source or investment source. Under which source we can deduct section 14, expenses under section 14. මේක කියලා නෑ පැහැදිලිව. හැබැයි මේක කියවනකොට අපිට තේරෙන්න ඕන මොන assets සඳහාද section 14 apply වෙන්නේ කියලා. කාටද කියන්න පුළුවන්? මොන සෝස් එකටද අදාළ වෙන්නේ කියලා මේක. අපිට මේ පනතේ තියෙන හැම තැනකම හැමදේම 100 එකට නොකියුවාට ඒ කතා කරන විදිහෙන් අපිට තේරෙන්න ඕනේ to which source this is applicable කියලා. කාටද කියන්න පුළුවන්? Okay, I will ask that question in this way. To which source depreciable assets can be referred? To which source? Depreciable assets අදාළ වෙන්නේ මොන source එකටද? Business income source එකටද? Investment income source එකටද? යන්තම් මතකයි. දෙන්නෙක්ට මතකයි. Good. That is applicable for a business income. That means section 14 is applicable to an asset that can be categorized under business income. That means the asset that is used for the production of business. ඒක තමයි මේ depreciable assets කියන එකෙන් කියන්නේ. So, section 14 is applicable only to a business income. That means these deductions can be made only against business income. ඒක තමයි මේකෙන් කියන්නේ. Then now section 14 says this section is applicable for the deduction under business income source. Then irrespective of whether they are capital nature or not can be deducted. So under section 11 restricts capital nature expenses, but under section 14 permits capital nature repairs and improvement. So these are the things that I can explain under section 40. Yes, there are two business income. Very good. Then තේරෙනවා ගොඩක් දෙනාට. Okay. Then under section 14 subsection 2 the deduction of improvement. So under section 14 we are considering repair expenditure and improvement expenditure. Both expenses are considering under section 14. But under subsection 2, we are restricting improvement expenses. When we are deducting improvement expenses under section 14, there are some restrictions. That means total expenditure incurred during that period is not allowable as a deduction. But for the repair expenses, total amount can be allowed as a deduction. If it is an improvement expenses, at that time, it is allowed as a deduction with the restriction. So that restricted amount is provided under subsection 2 of section 2. So how do we determine whether that expenditure is repair or improvement? Is it an easy task? No, it is very difficult because it is very difficult to draw a line in between repair expenditure and improvement expenditure. So because of that, in the act, in the provision section 14 itself, there is a specific definition for the term improvement. So it says in this section, so here, this is a section, this is a definition applicable only to this section. So that is why we have given that definition in the same section. In this section, improvement means, that means this is not relevant for others, improvement term provided in other sections. This definition is applicable only to the term provided under section 40. So in this section, improvement means the expenditure incurred by a person to make additions or alterations to a depreciable asset, which enhances the value of such asset. That means sometimes we are incurring repair expenditure. It does not enhance the value of such asset, just maintaining the asset. So that kind of expenses are there. We call that kind of assets repair or maintenance. That is not restricted. Total incurred expenditure during that period can be deducted without restriction. But if that expenditure is categorized and or identified as an improvement expenditure, then also this restriction is available. For the identification of whether that expenditure is a repair or an improvement, we have to go through this definition. So that expenditure should enhance the value of such asset, then that expenditure can be considered as an improvement made to that asset. So that kind of improvement is a restricted amount. So it says excludes the expenditure incurred in maintaining or repair a depreciable asset which temporarily enhance the value. That means we are incurring some expenses for repair or maintenance. That expenses also sometimes enhance the value, but it is very temporary. For the improvement, we are incurring expenditure for the improvement, but it enhances the value of that asset. It is not for the temporary, but for more, for several years, that enhancement will be there. So, the improvement is a different thing from the repair or maintenance. So this is the restriction provided under subsection 2 of section 14. It says we have to categorize, we have already categorized the assets in the business, under business. So assets used for the business purposes, we can categorize that assets into several classes. That asset classification is provided under Schedule 4 because Schedule 4 is applicable for the depreciation, for the giving for granting depreciation. We have considered that schedule. So that schedule is applicable for the depreciable assets. Under section 14, we are restricting, we are applying section 14 for the depreciable assets. Because of that, the asset classification under section, schedule 4, that is under for the depreciable asset, is used for the restriction under this section. So it says shall not exceed. That means the improvement value incurred during that period shall not exceed. That is the restriction. If that improvement expenditure is incurred to an asset classified under class 4. Under class 4 means that is class 4 asset means that is a building or any partition. So we can see that if we are referring schedule 4 of the Income Tax Act, you can see classes. Under that classes, the class 4 assets means buildings, mainly buildings. So if that improvement is expenditure is incurred for a building, then 5% of the written down value of the asset. That means 5% of the written down value of the asset at the end of the previous year shall not exceed. The next one is if that improvement expenditure is incurred for an asset other than class 4, 20% is the restricted amount. Up to 20% of the previous year written down value can be deducted. The balance is not deductible, then the balance amount should be added to the depreciation basis of the year. So this is the rule given under section 14. So it is very difficult to understand without proper example. So because of that, we can do that example in the next week. Until then, you can read these slides. I will share these uh, with the students with you. So you can read this example and then you can understand how we should calculate this restriction. මේක කියවනකොට තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මේ ගණන් ටිකත් එක්ක බලලා හොඳට බලන්න මේක කරලා තියෙන විදිහ. So next week, actually next week I am out of country. So because of that, next Friday we don't have a class. After that, I will try to do next week's session in the uh, coming week. That means week starting from 10th. I will try to do a lecture in 10 on 10, that means on Monday. I will inform it to you through Miss Kalhari. So after that, we have a midterm test. So because of that, prior to that midterm test, I should conduct 2 sessions. So because of that, I want to do 2 sessions prior to 14th. I will try it. එතකොට 14 වෙනිදාට කලින් කොහොම හරි සෙෂන් දෙකක් කරන්න තමයි මම හිතන්නේ. නෙක්ස්ට් වීක් එකේ මම නැති නිසා අපිට ෆ්‍රයිඩේ කරන්න ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැ ක්ලාස් එක. අපි try කරමු කොහොම හරි ඊළඟ සතියේ 14 වෙනිදාට කලින් මේ සෙෂන් එක ඉවර කරන්න. එතකොට එක දවසකට ගොඩාක් කරත් ඔළුවට යන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා okay, today now we can stop the session because this example is little bit complicated. So you need time. Even though we start this calculation today, we cannot finish it. So that is why I'm going to do it in the next week. So after that, you will have better understanding about section 14. Okay, then if you have questions, you can ask now. If you don't have questions, we can stop the session. Tell me කතා කරන්න ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් අහන්න. ප්‍රශ්න නැත්නම් අපි අදට ක්ලාස් එක නවත්තමු. Okay, good night. Good night. We can stop the session now. Good night.